today's video is more about a conversation with you rather than me talking to you. I mean, obviously I can't hear back until you comment, but I was just walking along the beach here. I'm at Merriweather Beach in Newcastle, and there is quite a swell, so I am sure there is a loud ocean noise in the background. So using that sound to clear as you listen to me, to activate, just feel it sweeping over you. Yeah, there's a lot of sweeping being done at the moment, so I'm just helping the process. So I was walking along the beach and pondering, what will I talk about? There are a few things I had in mind, and one I definitely want to talk about, but maybe later in the week. I'm driving back home this week to northern New South Wales, and so I'll be at my home base. Well, I don't have a home base. I'm going to find a home base, but I'll be in my home area, and so I'll talk about that one then. It's a surprise. So I was pondering, what will I share with you? And this topic of awakening, that whole spiritual awakening, as it's so often called. I'm not really aligned with that terminology, but I couldn't really think of another one, because I thought what you're really doing is awakening to the truth of who you are. I mean, that's what an awakening really is, and when people experience awakenings, that's what it's about. So I was watching a YouTube video yesterday, and a lady was saying about how she had her awakening experience, and she said it was with the birth of her child. And so I was pondering this because mine was the same. And then I was thinking about all the different ways that we have these experiences of awakening. And for some, it can be really quick and sudden, and for others, it can be over a longer period of time, which is how it was for me. It was like a gradual blossoming rather than a massive Kundalini experience, and that was it. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful for people to share? What was your awakening like? You know, your awakening in terms of maybe spiritual awakening, but also, since my channel is about the rose line, also your awakening to the rose line. And although you may have heard me tell this story before, I thought I'll just share a little bit about my awakening journey. Obviously, there's been periods in time like the harmonic convergence, and then around 2000, which was for me when I had my awakening. And then there was another sort of group of another consciousness expansion happened around 2012. And then, of course, in the C years, starting in 2020, that those external circumstances did bring an awakening to so many people on so many levels. So I'm interested to hear about, when did you have that sudden awareness that you were so much more than your physical self? And I don't mean that in a religious sense. I just mean when you suddenly realized that the 3D life was actually incredibly limiting and constricting, and there was so much more to you, and that there was a pathway to discover more about that, about who you actually are at your core. And the thing is with this, there's no right or wrong. There's no, you're way further down the track than me, who just woke up during COVID. There's no right or wrong, because it's all so beautifully timed. It's all in alignment with your soul path. And this is what is so exquisite about it, is that we're each on our own journey. We each have our own timeline, and we become aware that there is more to us than this beautiful physical body we inhabit, when it is the perfect time for us to become aware of that. Now, I know for some people, they will say, as a child, I knew, and I've always known, and I've always spoken with the angels, or I've always been psychic. And for me, that wasn't the case. As a child, I grew up Catholic, which so many people seem to say that when they're talking about their awakening journey. I did grow up Catholic. My father was Catholic, not my mother. But I did go to a Catholic school, we went to church and so on. But unlike so many people who talk about their Catholic upbringing, I actually loved mine. I was so devoted. But here's the thing, my devotion, it wasn't to the church, my devotion was to Mary. I loved Mary. And I remember on the first Saturday of every month at 8 a.m. there would be a mass, and it was called Children of Mary, and you'd go and you'd wear your little communion veil. Oh my gosh, I went every month. I loved Mary so much. And so that devotion, that was the way my spirituality and my devotion started at a young age. And for me then, it wasn't, and I mean, I let a lot of that go in my early 20s, although when I met Michael, my husband, when I was about 28, he was a practicing Catholic at the time. So I did sort of delve into it just for a little bit around that time again. But in terms of my awakening, my spiritual awakening came with the birth of my second child, Heidi, which was in 2000. Although this is what I was pondering, it's interesting because my first child, Max, was born at the end of 1997. That was also an awakening for me, although you wouldn't call it a spiritual awakening, but it was an awakening to what was going on with regards to health choices, shall we say. And Michael, my kid's dad, is a chiropractor, so actually even meeting him at 28 did expand. I was a physiotherapist at the time, so it did expand my paradigm significantly. And then when I was pregnant with Max and I was looking at how I wanted to birth and looking at the things that are put in children after they're born, I made choices then that were different to the accepted choices. And that was an expansion for me. So it was an awakening to the so-called health system. And so there was an expansion in that. And at that time, as soon as Max was born, like any chemicals in the house, gone. We only ate organic food, and that was hard to get in 1997. So there was an awakening at that level. And then, but then when Heidi was born in 2000, she was maybe 2 or 3 months old. She was a water birth at home. Max had been born in a birth centre. And so I knew by then that I wanted to have my remaining 2 children at home. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. But it was when she was 2 or 3 months old, and I still clearly remember having a cup of tea with a friend, and she had a couple of kids similar ages to mine, and she said, no, we were reading a book, Simple Abundance by Sarah Bon Brannock. I think that's her name. And one of the pages talked about spirituality. And I remember saying to this friend, I can remember it like it was yesterday, what's the difference between religion and spirituality? Now at that time, Heidi had just been christened and Max was also christened. Well, as soon as I asked that question, the information came from everywhere. That was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And I think, like so many Catholics, I was first drawn into the world of the angels because it's familiar. And there happened to be an angel shop near where I was living. And Doreen Virtue was really big at the time, and she just released her angel deck, or I don't know how long it had been around, but it was still very much a go-to deck. And so that sort of opened up my doorway, and then I went from the angels to the fairies, and well, the rest is history. It gradually moved from there. So that was the point. That was in 2000. That was the point where suddenly I began to view the world differently. I learned about manifesting. We moved from here. We were living here in Newcastle, near Newcastle, and we moved up to Mullumbimby in the northern part of New South Wales. And so that was my big shift. But I want to say, tying in the rose line, then when I was pregnant 2 years later with Grace, and so I became pregnant with Grace when I was living here, but she was born just after we moved to Mullum, and that's when I trained in pranic healing. That's the only certification I've ever done. And so I went and learned pranic healing. I learned about energy, and the teacher no one was allowed to do anything on me because I was pregnant. So the teacher was working with me, and at the time she said to me, I'm seeing roses all around you. You have a really strong connection with the rose line. No, she didn't say that. You have a really strong connection with roses, and you know the meaning of the rose. And that meant nothing to me at the time, but that was my introduction. And after that, I began to communicate with roses, and that led into what I'm doing today. And so interesting, my 3 kids, and they're quite different in that Max is a Capricorn, I'm a Taurus, so there's my earth element, and he's very Capricorn. And although Aquarius rising, so that gives him a little bit more expansive energy there. And then Heidi is a Pisces. I'm a Pisces rising. And then Grace is an Aries, and I'm an Aries moon. So it's quite interesting that they all reflected parts of me. And they all represented different awakenings, sort of that awakening more on the physical level, then the awakening at the spiritual level, and then my awakening to the rose line. So I was just pondering that and the beauty of that. And I know this is actually more about me, which I mean is probably not a bad thing. It's nice to know a little bit more about me if you're watching my channel. But as I said, now I've shared about me. What I would love to hear is about you, about your awakening. Like, when did you suddenly become aware that there was more to you, and that you actually were a soul who just sort of squeezed into this meat suit, as I've heard someone call it, but I mean really it's this beautiful physical shell. When did you realize that? And was it quick, or was it slow like mine, where it just gradually happened? And I mean, of course it never ends, it's continually happening. Yeah, I'd love to hear your story. Really love to hear your story. So share below if you feel to, and if you don't, it's okay, but maybe just contemplate it, because it may be something that you haven't spent a lot of time contemplating, because it's a beautiful thing to acknowledge. It's a pivotal moment in your life, and so just giving attention to it and honoring it almost like invites the energy in of more pivotal moments, I think, by acknowledging, feeling gratitude. Anyway, here's a little bit of bit more beach energy for you before I go. Sorry, I realize it's been a little shaky, but I just like doing them outside so much better. Even when the sun's in my eyes and it's shaky, I just feel more natural, I feel more flowing, and just bringing you the gift of this beautiful water as well, and the cleansing that it brings. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to reading more about you. And also, actually, I'll just mention, I don't usually mention this, but if you are enjoying my channel, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe. As I mentioned a couple of videos ago, I'm not putting ads on my videos now, but you subscribing and liking as well as commenting also really helps me, and it helps more people find the channel and learn more about the rose line. Rose blessings to you.